Well, hello there, my friends, and welcome back. My name is Stephanie Safarian, and you're listening to episode 482 of Sustainable Minimalists. If you're just tuning in, you've never heard my voice before, you have no idea what this show is about. This is a show about intentional and eco-friendly minimalist living. On today's show, we are breaking down the tenets of values-based spending. So if you're like me, you have so many corporations, so many companies, so many influencers, so many brands vying for your attention. They all want a piece of your hard-earned paycheck. Everything looks shiny and new. Perhaps you want all of it, but you can't afford all of it. Heck, I cannot afford all of it. Heck no. So where should we best put our money? My guest today argues that's the wrong question. The right question is, where are our values? Because if we nail down on those, we can then tackle the next question, which is where can we best put our money? So I am no financial expert. Here to help me today is someone who's an expert in the financial realm, and her name is Jill Siriani. Jill is the co-host of the Frugal Friends podcast. She is also the co-author of a new book titled How to Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. Jill's here to outline what her and her co-host Jen describe as values-based spending. And hopefully, if we're doing it right, we're not only satisfying our needs and wants, but we're also making the world a bit of a better place. Jill, I'm so thrilled to talk to you for the second time. How are you?
I'm doing well, Stephanie. So glad to be here.
Well, again, happy to have you. Update us. What's been going on with you and the Frugal Friends podcast, and tell us about the new book. Just lay it all out.
Yeah, so I'm still the co-host of the Frugal Friends podcast. I'm still a licensed clinical social worker, so getting to blend that mental health perspective with personal finance, which has led both my co-host Jen and I to write a book called Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. And I'm personally in love with this title because it is also a message to me as well as a love letter to our listeners, basically teaching people how to spend better. I think our frugal friends journey has led us to this point of really understanding that personal finance is not a one size fits all. We need personal finance content that is tailored to the needs of individuals. And this idea of values based spending, spending on what we love, what we value, is what we found to be sustainable for most people and allows us to really buy what we love without going broke.
Hmm. Well, I must say you caught my attention in the first chapter. You make the art. Oh, and by the way, thank you for the advance copy, listeners. It's excellent. But you caught my attention because you said that there's a problem with telling people to only spend on what they need. And that struck my attention because I say that all the time. So what is the problem with me telling my listeners that you should be spending on needs and not wants?
It's not realistic, really. It lacks an understanding of us being whole people, that we are physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, relational beings, and we have both needs and wants. And our lifestyles and money management need to be able to reflect that. Of course, we do need to be responding to our needs first, but that does not negate the fact that we have desires, pursuits, passions, things beyond just needing a roof over our heads. One of the things that has been a helpful kind of guiding light for us in this concept is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure you're familiar, comes from an American psychologist, Abraham Maslow, who it's this pyramid shaped hierarchy of needs, kind of like the food pyramid, only better, I think. And so at the bottom, you've got your physiological needs, our need for air, water, food, shelter, followed by safety needs, which are things like employment, health, resources. Then love and belonging, which is friendship, family, a sense of connection. Next is esteem. That speaks to our levels of confidence, respect, achievements. And at the tippy top is self-actualization, which is just a mouthful to say where we find meaning and purpose, creativity, expression of ourselves. And what we've seen with how this then relates to our spending is that oftentimes, certainly we will spend on that very bottom, our food, water, shelter. But once we get some of these lower level needs met, even if they're not entirely met fully, we will sometimes use money to try and meet these other higher level needs of love and belonging, esteem, self actualization, whether or not we actually need to, right? We don't have to spend money to have friends, but it does come along with that. So I think finding ways where we can create space in our spending plan to be able to spend on these things because they are needs. We just may not value them like we value water, food, and shelter, but we do have love and belonging, esteem, self-actualization needs that money needs to go to some degree. Maybe we're not spending it exactly correctly to meet our values, and that's part of it, is getting to the nitty-gritty of how do we actually spend in full alignment with that, but recognizing we've got a plethora of needs. Some might be valued more than others, but all of it needs to be able to have space for spending.
I wonder if what you're speaking to there is just the evolution of our capitalist culture, right? Like you mentioned, you don't need to spend money to have friends, but we need to spend money to cultivate our friendships, let's say in 2024. And I think that's a problem. I think that's a commercialization of the hierarchy of needs, that we seem to think we need to spend money in order to get these needs met. I don't necessarily think that's true. And I think that's definitely a problem, especially with hypercapitalism. But you do give an interesting statistic in the book. You write that according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 1901, families spent an average of 20% of their income on non-necessities. But a century later, in 2002, that figure was 50%. So families spent an average of 50% of their income on non-necessities. Why do you think that is?
Oh, isn't that statistic wild? There has been a creation of desire, really. I think marketers have gotten a lot more just aware of psychology, really. There's whole research done on spending psychology and the psychology behind impulse spending. And marketers have gotten their hands on this and are doing very well to almost manufacture desire so that we will buy and consume and spend to solve our problems. When writing the book, one of the things that kind of struck me is just how many people have their own lawnmowers, wouldn't dare to ask our neighbor for a cup of sugar if we ran out. We have been so conditioned, at least in the States, to buy our way out of our problems. Sometimes it quote unquote works. Usually it doesn't. It's not creating community. It's not helping us to problem solve. It is not tapping into our creativity and how to solve for these different things or really meet our needs and values in more accurate, beneficial ways. But a lot of it does have to do with just our access to consumables and big businesses and companies trying to sell us that we need this in order to have belonging, in order to feel good about ourselves, in order to feel accomplished. We need the next new thing. And I really think it's time for each of us to really create a pause to discern, is this actually something that I need, or can I meet some of my needs in different ways that don't cause me to spend just because somebody else is telling me that I need to spend?
That's the perfect segue, Jill, into discussing what you call values-based spending. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as I was reading about values-based spending in your book, it sounded like a great framework to just get intentional about what you're choosing to spend your money on. And again, correct me if I've got that wrong, but talk to us about values-based spending. What is it? How do we determine our own values? Break it down for us, because in the world of Amazon and e-commerce at our fingertips, our values can get lost in the noise.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. We have not buried the lead with values-based spending. It is exactly that. It's spending on our values. And I want to back up a little bit to say that we believe and talk about in the book how spending is a skill. I think we've been sold this myth that you've got personality types that are spenders or savers. And we believe everybody has a bit of both. And even if somebody lacks the ability to do one or the other, it is a skill that can be learned like any other skill. So, teaching people this skill, because most of us have not grown up learning this well in any sort of beneficial way of how do I steward these resources, knowing that we all have to spend. We are faced with spending decisions daily. There is no world where we can only save, and it's not something that we would recommend. So, truly spending well as a skill, but on the things that we ultimately value. That, of course, is going to include food, water, shelter. All of those things are going to be included in that, but also where else some of these resources get allocated and how we can make sure that we feel really good about the way that we are spending our resources. And so, one of the first steps that we encourage people to do in values based spending is a little bit less tangible, but I will get to a tangible action step as well. But the first one is just getting curious. And this definitely comes from a bit more from my mental health background and kind of the work that I do with my clients. And we really have to lay a mental foundation for the actions then that we hope to take. So we don't begin with a budget with ourselves, with other people. We begin with the mindset around our lifestyles, the way that we are perceiving ourselves and the world around us. And so getting curious with ourselves is a really great first step that will help us immensely and create a foundation for what comes after that. And what I mean by this is really asking ourselves non-shaming, non-leading questions about the way that we live life and the way that we want to live life. So, for example, let's say I really like shopping. One thing that could happen let's say I'm impulsively shopping a lot. I'm just buying things I wasn't intending on, and then I feel guilty for spending this money that I probably shouldn't have, but I don't really know how exactly I should be spending the money. And I might ask myself, like, why do I shop so much? Very different from what I would describe a curiosity lens of what is it about shopping that I enjoy? So you can see how that first question is a little bit shaming. It leads me to the defensive of why versus really wondering about myself before I get to the next steps of then what do I do about it? Learning about what is it about shopping that really seems like it meets a need for me. And when I can ask in this non-shaming way, I can learn more and then I can start to shift some of the behaviors around the way that I spend. So we encourage people to avoid the why question when it comes to getting curious about ourselves. Not that why is a bad question altogether, but when it comes to learning about ourselves, it can put us on the defense. So just asking ourselves about our daily interactions, our daily spending patterns, getting to the root of what is it here that I'm drawn to? What need is this meeting could be helpful questions. And then from there, eventually, we want to do a 90-day transaction inventory. So this is looking at all of our transactions over the last 90 days, pulling out our bank statements, our credit card statements, wherever there's a record of us spending money, and going through everything that we've spent on in the last 90 days will also really help to give us a sense of where is our money going? What do I value? And maybe even what don't I value? It could start to reveal transactions that I didn't feel good about, not glad that I spent on that. Okay, I can rule that out as a category that I'm just not that interested in spending on.
So, in your capacity as podcast hosts to help people determine their values so that they can spend with more intention. What do you commonly see coming up for people? I'm guessing it's the connection with others, the social piece. We're going out to dinner with our friends to see our friends. Perhaps I'm wondering, do you ever see intellectual pursuits, people buying an awful lot of books because they want to tap into their higher level intellectual thinking skills? What do you see most often when it comes to drilling down the values and values-based spending?
When we first started talking about values, Jen and I on the podcast, we had this entire list of 100 plus different values that you could have. And while that's still somewhat true, we've really narrowed it down and been able to identify that most people, their core values are these four F's: faith, family, friends, and fulfilling work. That ultimately, these are the things that kind of provide that sense of belonging, connection, self-actualization. These are the areas that we really want to be. It's where we want to be spending time. It's what provides the most joy, meaning, purpose to us is faith, family, friends, and fulfilling work. And yet we will often spend in ways that aren't necessary in order to have more of one of these four F's or all of these four F's. For instance, let's take coffee as a purchase. Let's say we're going through our 90-day transaction and we see a bunch of coffee purchases. That's a common one, certainly. Sometimes it's coffee out with a friend. Sometimes it's just a coffee that was grabbed out of habit. And so there may be circumstances where that coffee really was aligned with my values. It got me out of the house. It got me time with a friend. And I really valued every bit of that interaction and every taste of that coffee. Whereas this other one, I don't even remember. I must have gone through the drive-through, wasn't even thinking. I guess I was on my way to the store and I passed the coffee shop and I just turned in. Okay, that was a habit purchase that wasn't really all that fulfilling, not that necessary. And so this is how our understanding of our values and this curiosity lens and looking at our transactions can really help us to tease apart, what do I want to spend on? What don't I? And in what circumstances could this be valuable for me to be spending on? But ultimately, wherever we can align our spending towards these four F's can be most helpful and beneficial for us.
I'm wondering too, as you were talking about the coffee, I'm thinking about my history with to-go coffee. When I was working outside of the home, my habit was to stop at the coffee place. My listeners have heard this story before, but if it was a decent day, it was a cheap Dunkin' Donuts cup of coffee. But if it was like a really bad day, I'm really stressed, we were going straight to Starbucks. And I was buying coffee 5 days a week out of the home. And I say all that to say that in 2024, where we have hashtag self-care culture and treat yourself culture, and life is so hard and stressful, we need treats to get through our days. How does that fall into values-based spending? Because the value could certainly be take care of yourself and enjoy your life, but those coffees or those handbags or whatever it is or those manicures, whatever it is you're getting to care for yourself and treat yourself, that adds up. It can kill a budget. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm of two minds with this because I do believe that our spending does not need to be deprivation, but it could be sacrifice. So there are times where we might have to say no to certain things depending on the parameters of our spending plan, but there are times when we don't have to. And a lot of this has to do with our season and our goals and our values. This is a lot to distill. I know that I'm saying a lot here, and it doesn't have to happen overnight. This is a process that we can take ourselves through of curiosity first, just continuously being curious. But there's also the realities of our money and our bills, and being able to look at these parameters and what they do and don't allow for, and what we want for our futures. So a lot of this curiosity is going to bring in future. What do I want for myself going forward? And what can I do now that is going to help me get there? One of the questions we like to ask is, what's one thing I can do now that will get me more of what I value in the future? And by doing that, we can just take these small steps in that direction. A lot of things that we see with people as far as future financial goals go are debt payoff, saving for a house, growing a family, retirement investing, being able to potentially be a little bit more work flexible or choose a career that might feel a little bit more inspiring to somebody in their creativity and their skill set, and they might feel locked in a job right now. And these are big future goals, but a lot of it then does come down to the daily decisions we're now making and whether or not they're going to help us get to that debt freedom, that retirement with a nice little nest egg, or the growing of the family or a house. So when we are able to think about the future, we can then step back and identify, then what is my spending reflecting here? If I say that I value being able to spend more time with my family in the future and be a little bit more work flexible, what am I doing now that supports that goal? So that doesn't mean that we can never get the mani-pedis or the coffee out or the you name it, whatever your spending kryptonite might be. But it does bring in this whole person, past, present, future perspective on how does this inform my spending now, so that it's not deprivation, possibly sacrifice, but I can hold the tension between both, where I get really amazing things now and I can enjoy life. And I can also be moving forward to pursue these future goals that I may have. And it's really amazing, Stephanie, to find that oftentimes when we're able to take this perspective and begin walking it out, we can meet our needs in ways that don't necessarily cost money. A lot of times it might not be the mani-pedi. Maybe it's, I just need to get out of the house and I need to feel like pampered in some way. Are there ways that I can do that, meet that need without spending $75 every time that I go?
Yeah, that speaks to me, Jill. As you're talking about values-based spending, I'm thinking about applying it to my own life. And I'm totally on board with the pause. It's essentially a pause before you hand your credit card over, right? Like, what's the deeper need I'm seeking to fulfill through this purchase? If you can nail down on that, and perhaps it's a 4F, one of the 4Fs, I know for me in my life, once I've nailed down what F, let's say I'm trying to fulfill, I will then, knowing me again as somebody who is quite frugal, I will say, oh, I'm trying to fulfill this family or this friend's need, like spending time with them. I don't need to make a reservation and spend $150 on dinner so I can see my good friend. I can invite her over for coffee, right? So I see what you're saying about fulfilling the need without necessarily spending the money. But I want to talk to you about the D word, dopamine, because yeah, we can get to the bottom of our spending habits and nail down the why all we want. But in a lot of ways, our brains are working against us, and then we have marketers enticing us to impulse buy. So it sounds great. Values-based spending sounds great, but there are roadblocks in the way. There's our brains and there's marketing. So we're going to talk about those two roadblocks, but we're going to do it after our sponsor break. And we're back. Today I'm speaking with Jill Siriani. This is her second appearance on the show. Listeners, I've linked to her first appearance in this week's show notes. But Jill is the co-host. She has another host, Jen, of the Frugal Friends podcast. She's also the co-author of Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. It releases on January 7th, but you can pre-order it now. Jill, Before the break, you did a really great job of outlining values-based spending. But now we have to talk about dopamine because we have been trained by marketing professionals to buy as our first resort. And as we have continued buying over the years, we have now an ingrained habit in which we get this hit of dopamine. We feel good for a little bit after the purchase, which leads us to continue to buy to get more and more dopamine. Breaking this habit is really darn hard. In your capacity as somebody who spends her life talking about budgeting and finances, is just getting to the bottom of your values enough to rewire our brains?
It's not the whole picture, certainly. You are identifying a big barrier here. And I don't want to villainize dopamine or marketers. Dopamine is a naturally occurring substance in our bodies that releases during these times of excitement. But what you're describing here is just this overwhelming amount of dopamine and how hooked on this experience of shopping, clicking, one click buying, and our brains do release that dopamine and it creates these neural pathways, these pleasure seeking pathways where then we want more and more of it. And that is something that needs to be retrained if we are going to really dial in on a values-based spending lifestyle. But it can be done. One of the things that we reference in our book is this research done by Anna Lemke in her book, Dopamine Nation, great read, where she is working with people struggling with various forms of addiction. But she found in her research that just 1 month of abstinence from whatever addiction they were dealing with, whether it be drugs or shopping, did help to retrain those neural pathways, those pleasure receptors in the brain. And it even allowed an opportunity for those items to be introduced back in reasonable amounts if that made sense for the client that she was working with. And all of this was really delightful for us to read because we've been talking about no spend challenges for a very long time on the podcast. And so it confirmed the benefit of this type of tool that we have in our tool belt to be able to retrain ourselves and make better spending decisions. So one of the things that we encourage people to do if they've never done it before is a 30-day no spend challenge. This is, we don't love extremes, and I know that this sounds extreme, but it is not a place where we say set up camp here. It's 30 days, it has a start and an end, and then we continue living life. This isn't we're going to always fast from these things, but it has these benefits of retraining our brain, giving ourselves a chance to just breathe and pause and get curious about ourselves, to notice what comes up in us as we choose to eliminate certain items from what we are going to be purchasing in any given 30-day time span. And really helps us learn more about ourselves. What do we enjoy spending on? What are the things that I wanted to do? How did I get creative to meet those needs instead of spending? And then at the end of those 30 days, what do I want to incorporate back in? And what am I good with saying no to that maybe I never would have realized before because I'd never given myself the opportunity? So it is this 30-day no spending challenge really is a dopamine fast, exactly what Anna Lemke talks about in Dopamine Nation. Pairing some of these different tools together is how we get towards this lifestyle that nobody ever arrives at, right? I'm still learning about values-based spending, what it looks like for me, but we can get better and better at spending, and we can reduce our impulse purchases when we can incorporate some of these steps.
Well, you mentioned it, so we got to go there. You mentioned impulse spending. I do want to give a nod to your response there, and Dopamine Nation noted 30 days is a great amount of time to reset those neural set points. Absolutely. With spending, with anything, right? Do something for 30 days or refrain from a bad habit from 30 days, and you're on your way to, again, resetting that neural set point, whatever that set point is, whatever the habit is that you'd like to change. But we have to talk about impulse spending Jill, I know you said you don't want to villainize marketers, but I sure as heck do. They manipulate human behavior so that they can make more money at the expense of our wallets and the planet. So I'll just say that. But like, companies and corporations make money when we throw our values to the wind, when we abandon our values-based spending desires, and we buy on impulse. So talk to me about why, despite all the knowledge we have, despite our best intentions, why are we still impulse spending, myself included? Why are we doing this?
There's so much psychology behind impulse spending. It has to do with wanting to belong. It has to do with fear of missing out. It has to do with how we respond to this sense of urgency, wanting to be like those around us, measuring our success or failure based on what we see other people doing. There is so much deeply ingrained in us as human beings about how we make decisions. And a lot of them can be helpful in helping us to make quick decisions. There's so much that we do in a day that we don't have to actively think about, but some of that can be hurtful for us and our wallets when we don't create that pause of, wait a second, am I just responding to this out of some manufactured sense of urgency? Or is this something that I actually want? It will solve a need or a desire for me. It will make my life more efficient. And because we don't have that pause, because we've got these psychological, helpful, in some ways helpful things going on in ourselves, we will just make decisions impulsively that might not be the best for our wallets. And some of the top ways that we see this happening, and I'll be curious to know what's your impulse spending kryptonite, Stephanie, or even for your listeners. Each one of us probably will find ourselves somewhere here of either our impulse spending is maybe linked to habit spending. We just have become so accustomed to doing this. Every time I'm in Target, I buy a latte. Every time I go to Target, I just swing through the dollar spot, whatever it is, habit spending. You've got shopping as an activity. This a lot of times links back to the way that we were raised and how spending was modeled to us and explained to us. We just go shopping on the weekends. It's what we do. It's what we do for fun. It's how we relieve stress, which is linked to the next one, stress shopping. This could be either out in the wild or at home on your phone, scrolling to cope with whatever it is that's going on in the day. There's impulse spending that can happen because of social influence. This, of course, is also linked to that scrolling and the things that are being sold to us on social media or even within our own communities. I can think of many times where I'm just at a friend's house and I see some cool thing that they have, and it subconsciously just puts this thing in me that I've got to go get that very thing as well. And finally, we've got, not that this is an exhaustive list, but some of the top that we see is just the thrill of the hunt, that dopamine hit that's released as we are searching for an item, digging for something. This might be my thrift store people. We just like hunting for the deal and fulfilling some sort of need, or it's a coping mechanism. These are the top areas where we might be impulsively spending. And so if we can, even through our 90-day transaction inventory and getting curious with ourselves, be able to identify, where might I fall on here? Am I spending out of habit? Am I shopping as an activity? Am I stress shopping? Is this social influence? Is this the thrill of the hunt? That can help inform then our behaviors from there, how we might shift our patterns going forward.
Very helpful. All right. So I'm just going to talk out loud, think through my mouth, and I apologize to anybody listening because as you're talking, I'm thinking, what do I most commonly impulse buy on? Like what category of stuff? It's really not food. It's not coffee anymore. It's not handbags, but what it is clothes. So I see an ad, a targeted ad, let's say, for this adorable summer dress, and that has the potential to get me. And so if I'm going to follow your suggestions, Jill, and dig down and see what need am I trying to fulfill with this cute dress or whatever the clothing item is, it tends to be a desire for me to fit in with my peers, like to be not to be fashionable. It's more than that. It's to be part of the herd, let's say. I think that's really what it is, which is interesting because one of my values is not, or I wouldn't consciously say that one of my values is to be part of the herd, but maybe it is. The other thing I'll say here too is if I want to be accepted, essentially being part of the herd is essentially being accepted. I could either buy this dress for, I don't know, $70, let's say, which is a quick and easy fix. Or I could go to therapy for 12 plus weeks and get to the bottom of my desire to be accepted and why that's important to me. So I totally see how impulse spending seems to be that quick, easy Band-Aid fix, but it doesn't. It's not a fix. Take it away. Whatever you have to say, just go for
Oh,
it.
I love this. We're rolling up our sleeves right now. This is a great example, Stephanie. And I wonder if you could humor me by answering a few more questions. So, have you done this before? Did you saw the dress, you bought the dress? Can you talk to me about what happened after that?
Yes, it was horrible. So what I ordered did not meet my expectations. It didn't look great, right? Because I bought it online. I had nowhere to wear it because I, by and large, stay at home in my pajamas. That's a whole nother issue for another day. It also was horrible quality because I didn't have my hands on it. I didn't make an informed decision. It was an impulse choice. And so the second I received the item, I felt bad about myself and felt bad about my choice. And that was enough to inform future purchases to not do it that way again. And yet the need still is there, the need to be part of the herd.
Yeah. Oh, I so appreciate your vulnerability, Stephanie. This is truly wonderful, and I can see why your listeners love you so much. And I think you are highlighting exactly what happens for so many of us. You are vulnerable in this and courageous in sharing this, but you're also not alone at all. That is what happens after kind of an ill-informed impulse purchase that doesn't truly meet the need. Your need is, as you were able to very pointedly describe, belonging, a sense of acceptance. And no purchase is ever going to buy that. And you're right. I'm laughing along with you to say, but it's going to cost me far more in therapy. And I can appreciate that. There is a lot that we're going to learn about ourselves in this process. Sometimes it might lead us to therapy, and that's great. I am a therapist, so I'm always going to talk highly about that pursuit. But I recognize that not everybody can do that at various seasons of life. But I still think that there are ways that we can care for ourselves, even if we're not meeting with a professional mental health therapist. And so, a couple of things that come to mind for you in this situation that I think could be relevant for a lot of people is considering what acceptance looks like, belonging looks like, and where you currently do experience that. Do you have close friends, family that you can reach out to and spend time with and truly meet that need, probably for connection? If I were to dig even deeper, I would imagine that this sense of belonging might be raising a flag of, hey, I haven't been able to connect on a deeper level with another human lately, and maybe that's what I need to do. It could also be highlighting some pieces of just self-care. And I mean that in a way of allowing space for your own creativity and self-expression. I think if we're looking for acceptance outside of us, sometimes that can be indicating that there's room for acceptance internally. And one of the ways that we can get at this is doing things that we enjoy, that feel uniquely us. Where do we experience creativity of expression? Where do we just experience joy? As we're doing this thing, we just feel this sense of joy and we almost forget about other things. For me, some of that is I enjoy cooking, not when I have to, not when it's an obligation, but I do enjoy time in the kitchen trying a new recipe. And it does fulfill some degrees of confidence for me, creativity, rest. I forget about all other things when that's happening. Other times that's the garden for me when I'm able to connect to things that I feel skilled at doing. That is what fulfills my sense of a need for acceptance, accomplishment, or it could be that connection piece. Again, that's going to be that curiosity of what is this? Is this an internal or an external need? But I can almost guarantee you we'll never be able to buy that for ourselves.
Mm. My brain is going a mile a minute as you're talking. How interesting is it that an ad on social media can speak to my deep, innate desire to be accepted? This conversation is hitting on the fact that historically I haven't been accepted as who I am. And despite the fact that I perhaps pretend I don't care and I'm going on my own path in life, there's still that innate human desire to be part of the herd. And so I'm definitely going to continue thinking about this conversation, Jill. And I hope everybody else, if this resonated with you, maybe it's not a frilly summer dress, maybe it's something different, but you do the same. I have two more questions for you. And the first is with regard to your title, Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. We've determined what we love. We've determined our values and why or how our spending is supporting the values, enhancing the values. But where does the without going broke portion come from? Because I can feel like if we decide our value is faith, let's say, we could spend an unlimited amount of money on supporting that value of faith. So help me out.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the concepts that we also talk about is this idea of the radical middle. And we call it radical because not many people go there. We live in extremes. We can be drawn to extremes. I don't need to tell any of you that you could just open up any news article or the internet and find extremes. We are drawn to them. But we like to encourage people to hold the tension between both extremes, believing both have something to offer us, but we don't want to live in either one. And where can we find the tension, the radical middle of both, of being able to buy what we love without going broke? Is this radical middle, holding the tension of being able to get things, but also being able to keep some of my money as well, or yeah, not be completely destitute in it. And a lot of it has to do with what we've talked about already of values-based spending. It can help us to not spend recklessly when we are truly understanding and feeling good about where our money is going. But this then is where it comes to that very individualized approach that we can give these foundational principles, but each one of us needs to form and shape it in a way that makes sense for who we are and our circumstances. Some of those big things that are going to have to come into play are what we talked about already: future goals, current income levels, current season, which includes everything from where we're living, the type of housing we have, family makeup, whether we're single, partnered, with kids, with no kids, you name it. All of these are going to play into the decisions that we make and how much we can spend in any one category. And so that not going broke part really has to take into consideration our season of life, the parameters of our income, where we want to be going, and what we want to be currently spending on in this season. But the principles of values-based spending, of curiosity, of interrupting impulse spending, of honoring our season, of contentment and gratitude is what's going to come together to we can have and enjoy the things that are meaningful for us, that meet some of these higher level needs, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of all of our money. There are ways that we can meet our needs without spending so that we can put that money towards some of these larger future goals that we have for ourselves.
Yes. And I'll just say that perhaps once we get down and dirty an understanding of our values, and we may realize that we can support our values and meet our needs without spending a single cent. So again, some things to think about. But tell us, Jill, one more time, where can my listeners find more of your podcast goodness, more of your presence on the internet, more of your book? Give us all the details.
Yeah, so the book is Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. You can find it on our website, frugalfriendspodcast.com. Also, buywhatyou.love. And we also put out a podcast 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Frugal Friends Podcast, wherever you get podcasts.
One more plug for your book. It's amazing. I'm so happy I got to be one of the first readers. Thank you so much for that privilege. Jill, I wish you and Jen so much success. I always love talking to fellow podcasters. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Stephanie. It was an honor to be here.
Listeners, that's a wrap, my friends. Show notes are at mamaminimalist.com/482. And can you believe it? This extroverted wordsmith who always has something to say, she has nothing to say today in the outro. No eco tip, no reminder, no nothing. I guess I can just add, if you love the show, please review it. Thank you. Just do it. And if you really love the show, please consider becoming a supporter of the show. Book club on August 5th. See, I knew it. I could always find something to say. I will see you on Thursday, where we are discussing how to not eat microplastics. I know, what a topic. Isn't it crazy that in this world we have to have a show about how to avoid eating microplastic? That is in itself nutso. But we're doing it, and we're doing it on Thursday. I will see you then. If you need me, reach out. Otherwise, I'll see you Thursday, and take care.